target host that we can define. And then we were understanding about it, like how do we, so what is the user account that is required to define it? That is the remote user, that is Ansible or the particular user. And that user, is it require the sudo user permissions or not? And what is the type of connection that we're expecting to this the remote systems, that is SSH communication. And then we can define the some more properties like a gathering facts required or not. Yeah, so there are the properties that we are trying to understand in the declaration section. Then the next section which you have is the var section and the variable section. In that variable section, what are the variables that is required for about our Ansible point of view? Those variables we can define it with a variable name and value representation. And these variables we can read it within the script by using double curly braces notations. The double curly braces with a variable name representation, that we can read it, the variables which are defined in our var section, that's about custom variables. And as well as from the gather facts also we can read that some variables. Those variables also we can define this in the double curly braces, that is reading that the default variables which are providing by the playbooks, that is the custom variables and as well as default variables, that is the variable section. And the third section, what do you have this in playbook, like we can define the task section, like what are the module which we would like to execute it. So that's modules which we can identify from the Ansible module in the module section, and we can define those modules in the task section. But how to define is name, concept, and then we can add it about this module name and that module related all the arguments which we can pass it. But which are all the arguments or the parameters for that module, we need to refer this the Ansible. The first, before going to use it that task, the first we need to understand the requirement based module, identifying that module related parameters and the parameters related values which are required to set up for about our task purpose. And once that is defined, then that module we can add it in our task section in the playbook. That is the third section we are trying to understand. But the point what do we have this is some of the modules which are required to trigger that on the base of this the other task. Like a service is required to restart it on the base of if you are doing this, there's a tool configuration, or if you are doing this a tool installation, then the service is required to restart it. So those cases, if you have that, then we can identify those modules, and those modules are the task we'll define this in handler section. And the tasks which are defining in the handler section are not going to trigger by this the Ansible whenever you are on the playbook, but these will be triggered from that task section by using notify. Yeah, so that is about fourth section, handlers. You can notify that from the other tasks. Yeah, there are the four sections that we are trying to understand it. And then we were observing about it, the basic YAML file and all the sections of the variable with handler sections. And then when conditions, like yes, how do we define this the conditions within the playbook, like when is that which we can use it to add the conditions. If the condition is true, then only the task which will be executed. And we were understanding the some more like that the important one of the module, that line in file. So how do we add or how do we define thus the some lines on the target nodes? So that is, if you have this already configuration file and you need to add some custom line, or you need to replace that existing line, but how do you define it? Is the line in file is the module which is going to helpful to update about your configuration changes to the target nodes. And debugging, how do you perform it? Yes, so we are trying to understand how do we catch that the result of this the task. That means once task is executed, by default it doesn't display the output of the task. What exactly is happened? Is it success or the failure? We can just check it by using the status information, but we cannot get that exact the output which is generated by that the task. So if you'd like to the catch that's output, and if you'd like to print that output, then we can use it two modules, that is the register module and as well as debug module. The register module is helping that to catch that the output of the task, whether that is standard out or standard error or success or the failure. But that catched object by using the register the module, you can print that by using debug module. The debug, and which is the two parameters, var parameter or message parameter. So in the var parameter, whatever the object which you catch it, that's output complete, output of that object, you can print it as it is. Or on the base of the standard outs or the standard errors, if you like to define some custom messages with when condition, and you can define some conditions, and on the base of the condition you can define about our custom messages. Yeah, there are the points that's we were trying to understand. I hope so yesterday. So that was like a debugging options which we were understanding. Now let's go for this understanding some more like 2 or 3 other playbooks we have. So which we'll try to understand it, those remaining as well as. And then we go for this advanced than this playbook, that is the roles. But what about these roles and how the roles are going to play important role to apply the configuration changes by using Ansible. So we try to understand it that as well as. Yeah, so the next the one more playbook, if you just observe the some examples. Suppose the normally Apache, if you just consider about it, there is one kind of the tool. So that is tool like which we need to install that. If you would like to set up this tool, first I need to install the tool. Then I need to start the services of this tool. And if you have this any configuration files, this configuration files we need to manage it for this tool. And we have this like a deployment directory. That means if you have those any files like which I would like to publish that, those files how I can deploy it to those my Apache server is var html. That is a deployment directory. Yeah, so if I would like to update my application related some static files, HTML files or CSS files to host on this Apache, then I need to copy the files or I need to deploy the files to my var html. Yeah, so there are the tasks like if that tool, if you would like to manage it completely with the playbook or Ansible configuration management tool. So how do we install it, or how do we start the service, or how do we deploy that application, or if you have this any configurations, how I can manage that, the configurations, all this together. If we define that in one playbook, like in the task, like a task. So here, how to define all these activities is tasks, like installing the package, starting the services with a handless concepts, and copying the files as copy module using that. Or if you have some configuration file, I need to replace some lines, then by using line in file modules. Yeah, so like the complete tools, how to manage it, we try to understand one example. There's Apache wise, if you just observe that. Yeah, so this tool that means like suppose application is expecting 4 tools, like you need to manage this Apache for that application purpose, or you need to manage the Tomcat for application purpose, or you need to manage some MySQL database for application purpose, or you need to manage it some Nagios server for the application purpose. There are the tools. I mean, all these tools like this configurations or starting stopping approaches or the deployment approaches, whatever the things that you are going to do the manually of those tools for that about your application, and you should have those tools related configuration management scripts like the playbooks. So that's the main concept. But how do we easily manage it about that's each tool, that tool related all these tasks will come back. That is to discuss this more in the advanced role concept. But if you just take it about this Apache tool, an Apache tool, all this the activities, so how do we define this in the playbook? Yeah, so I mean, we know it already, the playbook, how to define it. But if you just try to understand it, so the how the tools will be managed is, yes, so this yeah, if you just observe this the playbook, it is going to apply this on the CentOS systems and becoming with sudo user permissions. And one of the tasks it is different. If you just observe that, like first installing Apache server, and then it which is once if it is done, it is notifying about the starting the service. Yeah, the start the service, restarting that Apache service. And then if you like to deploy this any files to this HTTP service, then we can use it to file modules or copy module or the line in files which we can use it. Yeah, there are some examples like how the tools will be managed, but we'll come back in a role section, so more concepts as well as. Yeah, so we are creating a file. So in where we are creating this is, suppose yeah, the file is the module which we are creating, that in which directory is the var html, and this is about our index.html. The like normally if you just recollect of it, whenever you are learning this Linux, and we were understanding the HTTP service, how do we install it and how do we start it and how do we host that application, and hosted application, how do we access it. We were understanding through that Linux commands. We went to the directory, we have created one index.html, that index.html we are trying to access it. But all these things, the simple with the script we are managing about it. Yeah, there's a point that is just to understand it. Yeah, create a file in the attributable in HTML, index.html. And in this index.html, so we are adding the some dynamic content which is required for about like you are deploying this on the two target nodes here. But on this the two target nodes, some custom message which you need to add it. So custom message, like yesterday we are trying to understand the line in file module, and we can add the host names. That means, so to this index.html file, so which is presented in the variable HTML, we are just adding about that host name of that node on which host the Apache's HTTP service is running. On that host, in this index.html file, we are going to add this line, that is host name of that Apache server. Yeah, that is, I mean, the simple tool, but how it is going to helpful, so we try to understand it. So now if you run it, if the install Apache is not available, it is going to try to install it, and if that is not started, it is going to start the service, and then it is going to create a file. This is about our custom file, and in the custom file we are adding about our custom lines. Or if you have this already index.html file, some file content, you can copy those files directly to this variable HTML by using copy module, that is source and destination already, which we had that in the command line based. So if you have this already existing file, you can create it, but here we're just creating one file under to that file, so dynamic content we are adding. Yeah, so if you run this playbook, but there is no new learning concept from here as the module point of view, but what we are trying to understand here, it is the tools related complete activities, how to manage it within the playbook, because this understanding is going to helpful in the role section. So this approach also we don't use it advanced to this which we are going to use it, but to understand this the roles, so we are going to understand the some Apache tool related the complete activities, how to manage it, that is installing the packages or starting the services or deploying that application to the servers. If with the Tomcat, you can deploy this application to Tomcat home directory, web apps directory, that is copy module, you can use it. Yeah, so let me run it and we'll see this the output of this the playbook. Yeah, so some syntax errors which we have in this file. The syntax error while loading YAML file, and mapping values are not allowed in this context. So what it is saying is, if you just observe in this Apache YAML file, line 2 on the column 9 is having the some syntax errors. Yeah, so if you open this, yeah, so indentation is very important. So if the indentation is not followed, so we will be having the syntax errors. Yeah, so here what is the error that we have is, yes, don't combine the comment line with triple triple hyphens which we have. So this indicating like as a starting line, but a hash. So that is what is the concept we have is we should not do like this. So we need to have the space between hyphens and hash representation. Yeah, this is required, but remaining all we have the some in two spaces. So make sure about it, two spaces, the space, that's enough. And here always these modules has to start with us within the name, and after the two spaces you can define about it at least two spaces, that's you can have it 3 or 4, then this is going to understand these properties belong to this module. Yeah, these notations, suppose if you have this kind of the errors, then what we can do this is, like in the online, suppose like what it is saying is, if you just observe the some error, okay, let me save this one. Suppose what is the error it is showing is syntax error while loading YAML file. Yes, okay, so some syntax error. But what are the line which is showing here? This is not the line where we have the syntax error. That means this Ansible, the parser, which is parsing about these YAML files, are not showing that exact in which line or in which column the syntax error we have this. It is not going to show this. Everything it is going to show this in the top, the top attribute which are defined. So if you have this kind of the problems, then what we can do this is just to take it about your the playbook which is implemented whenever you have the syntax errors, and we have some online editors which are helping to identify that's where is exactly my syntax issue. Suppose YAML syntax checker. Yeah, the YAML syntax checker online. Yeah, so best YAML validator online. So you can just the paste it here about the YAML which I implemented, and you can just go for this validating. This is showing this valid, not this one. So we have some other editor. Okay, let me find it. So YAML online parser, let me check it here. Yeah, so this is the one which is going to give that accurate results. Yeah, so now if you observe that it is showing about it error mapping values are not allowed here. Yeah, so here also it is showing the same thing, but I mean, so but this error it is not recognizing that. And if you just I mean, whenever you are changing about the file, you can immediately identify this where exactly the problem has been resolved or not. Yeah, so just use it about this editor which is going to helpful, and whenever you are adjusting about it automatically whether you have error or not, it is going to display. Yeah, these kind of online editors which we can use it to identify this exact the line and issues. Yeah, that's going to helpful, the online editors which we need to work with those online editors, or you need to just do that. I mean, changing the file and running this playbook and whether it is resolve the issue or not, that is a long process. Use it about our online editors, that's going to help. And now the issue has been resolved, that is just a space issue. Yeah, so now it is creating a file, but I mean, it is not installed in the Apache server. Apache is already, we have installed yesterday with some activities, and that is Apache is already installed, but it is creating a new file that is index.html, and it is adding the line in that index.html file. Even restart process is also not triggered because that is defined as a handler. And the total 2 tasks that have been executed on these 2 systems. And if we try to access about our the HTTP server index.html file, yeah, so that line has been added. The host name, so what is the host name that is having this is about our the master node which is having this as Ansible master is the host name. And if we try to hit with that, the second node which is having as Ansible node. Yeah, there is a like which we have done is we are just creating about our custom file, and in that custom file we are adding about our custom values. Yeah, that is, but the point of just what we can understand is that the tool related the completed task we will define in separate YAML file. If that application is expecting that the 5 tools, each tool, what are the tools you are going to use it in the infrastructure, each tool point of view, the separate, the playbooks that will be managed. Yeah, so that's the understanding. So there's a playbook. How do we manage the tool related activity separately? Yeah, but there's, I mean, no new module which we have learned it. Already existing modules we have used here. And one more point, sometimes which we need to run the shell scripts on the remote host. So how do we run the shell scripts on the remote host? Or using about our Ansible playbook. So this is one example which is helping. So like if you have the shell script file on the central machine or the controller machine, and we can copy the shell script to all the target nodes, and we can run that shell script on the target nodes. So that's the activity purpose. Like what it is doing is here, yes, it is going to apply this on all these hosts with this user information, And first, what are the host name? One SH shell script which you have that, but what is that script? What is the shell script if you just observe that? Yeah, so this is a shell script which we are trying to copy to all the target nodes and we are trying to execute it. But this is having the simple content. Host name is one variable and we're just printing about the host name, the simple script. But on the base of the requirement which you can add it about your task in the shell script, and the shell script you can copy it and you can run the shell script on the target nodes. So that's activity purpose. So how do you copy it and how do you run it is, so copy about your the shell script from the source system, that is central system, to the destination directories, and you can set that execute permissions as well as. So if you don't set it, whenever it is copied, it is going to use it by default only read write permissions. But if you'd like to execute it, we need to set the permissions as well as. That is a mode after copying this. And then we are adding about the some content as we were trying to understand line in file. So this is a hostname.sh. So after copying that, dynamically we are replacing about this what are the hostname variable which we have this is that line with hostname with the Ansible hostname. That means on which a node that is running that node related the hostname it is reading, and it is going to assign to this variable. And finally running the program. Yeah, that is the shell script. How do we execute it on the remote system is the shell, and then pass it about which script or where the script is located. So whatever we are the destination location we are defining about it in this location, once this copy module is going to try to copy that, once it is copied you can access it and you can run the shell script. Then we are catching this result of this shell script which is executed, then we are printing about it that standard out which we got it from the result. Yeah, there is a script which is helping how you can copy the shell scripts and how do you run the shell scripts. Yeah, so if you just okay, but the source files which you are expecting is in opt folder. That means now we have the hostname.sh, but it is trying to refer from so just try to copy to opt folder. Yeah, or you can define this in your script. So instead of this opt to hostname.sh, or you can define this from current directory itself, like hostname.sh. If you just define, it is going to take it from the current location. And one more point, if you just observe that here, like this is about our static file. So that means this sh which is required to copy that, we are just first copying this in one specific directory. From that directory we are copying that, but in the role section, so whenever we are going to talk about this in the roles, so we will be having the separate directories. We can have it to manage it about our static files of that tool. So I'll come back, but here we are just defining that what are the script which is required to copy to that. We are just placing this in our custom directory, and then we are trying to copy this to the target directory. But in the roles, so this is how to manage it about the files which are required to distribute to the target nodes. So thus we have the better way of management of this about our static files or the dynamic files which are required to distribute this to the target nodes. So there is the files and the templates concepts are available, which will come back in the role section. Yeah, so but we are defining this about our custom directory, and we are trying to copy from that custom directory to the target nodes. There's understanding. So let me execute this script. So if you have this about our custom shell scripts which are required to run on the 10 systems, you don't need to copy this one by one to all the systems and executing this each system log in that. Then define this a simple one module, copy module and shell module in the playbook, and just define this inventory file and use it that to run the shell script on all the target nodes. Yeah, so it is uploading the file to the remote host, and it is customizing that the lines which are required in that file after copying that, and running this programs, that is shell command, and debug which is trying to print it on this machine. What are the std outlines which you got? It is host name is Ansible master. Yes, on this machine, what are the host name that has been set up? This is the host name, so that's Ansible master. And on this host, the host name is Ansible node. That means like in the shell script, whatever we have defined, it is trying to execute it, the shell script, and the executed the result, it is captured and it is printing that. But what we are doing here, it is just doing the echo command. That is the output of that the script. Yeah, that is about how do we copy the files, the shell script files, and how do we run the shell script files on the remote host. So this is one activity, so which will be handled the most frequently to perform it. And last but not the least, on this the playbooks point of view to understand, so that is how do we define in one playbook multiple targets. So multiple targets, how to define, as we were trying to understand this declaration section, you can define in the host about which target groups that you would like to apply that. But in the playbook, can I define this the only one host and that host related task, or can I define this the multiple host, that means multiple declaration sections and with multiple tasks? Yes, we can define that the multiple declaration sections with the host or the users and that host related tasks, and with just leaving that one space, and you can define this another the target group, and that target group related the tasks which are required. That means for each and every target group, you don't need to define the separate playbooks. So in the single playbook itself, like you can define this multiple targets. This is one, this target is going to perform these tasks, and this is another target which is going to perform these tasks, but the single playbook instead of using the two playbooks. Yeah, but the remaining, like what we are doing is like the remaining approach is same, and we are installing some packages, that is links package or the telnet packages, and on this local system also some telnet packages are HTTP. I mean this task leave it off it, but just what we are trying to understand is in the single playbook we can define this multiple targets, that means the multiple declarations and that target group related task which we can add it. Yeah, so if you just try to understand this script. Yeah, the first it is running the playbook on the CentOS systems. This is not installing the HTTPD. I hope so. I mean the name we have given as HTTPD, but it is trying to install this links package, some package which we have, Linux based basic package. And telnet is already available, and then it is started this to run the playbooks on the local system. Local system, what is the group that we have defined is the master machine. And the telnet is already available, the HTTPD is already available. And finally, only one change applied. But in the playbook, so these tasks are run on this playbook, and these tasks are run on this play. Yeah, so that's about some concepts and some modules, like how do we run the shell scripts on the remote systems, and how do we manage this tool related activities in the single playbook, and how, sorry, how do we the catch this output, and how do we define this the printing this the custom messages or the result outputs. That is one more activity. And how do we add this, or how do we customize the lines on the target machines, and how do we define this in the single playbook with multiple the servers. Yeah, there are some activities which are trying to understand from the playbook, but which task that is required to perform, the task is on the base of the requirement which we need to refer from the module section of the Ansible. Then we need to implement that in the playbook, then we can apply that playbook to that whatever the target group that you have defined in the inventory to that group. Yeah, so there's concepts which are from the playbooks, how you can implement the modules within the playbook, and how you can run the playbooks, and how you can catch that output, or how you can debug that the result outputs which are running on the remote systems. But the next point, the point of this, the playbook wise, if you just observe that, so I mean, so is it having this that's advantage or easily to manage it about our infrastructures? Okay, we are saying about it like we can apply the configuration changes using the playbook, but the playbooks whatever we have implemented, can we say these are all the reusability, or can I manage this my files which are required to copy that in the file system wise? And one more point, what do you have to say? Suppose I need to install this 20 packages, like the base packages, like a wget packages, or I mean, using some HTTPD packages, or some SSH packages, or some like which we have this, the Maven packages or the Tomcat packages, all these packages which you need to install it. But all these packages, if it is required to define the 20 packages, then 20 tasks or the 20 modules we need to define that. That is not as a reusability. And then the task related, there's the handlers, and the task related, the variables. Okay, the file size or the playbooks, the file content is going to have this, the bigger one. On the basis of this, the more tasks which are adding are more variables and the more handlers point of view. Instead of that, that means all managing this, all these sections in the single playbook. Can I define or can I divide into this the multiple playbooks? Yeah, that means multiple playbooks in the sense multiple YAML files. Like what is the concept you have is, suppose if I have those like variables of the task, all the variables I can define in separate YAML file. And all the task of this the activity I can define in separate YAML file. And all the handlers as a separate file. But finally one playbook which contains the only declaration section. And that playbook, if you run it, automatically it has to read it all the variables from the separate YAML file and all the tasks from the separate YAML file, or all the handlers from separate YAML file. That means, can we define that structured based about all these, the tasks or the sections which are defining in the playbook? Yeah, so that's concept which are this is roles. Yeah, so what is the role if you try to understand it? The best way to organize about our playbooks. Yeah, without knowing the playbook, we cannot understand the roles. And without understanding the modules, we cannot implement the playbooks. But the better organizing about our playbooks, the role has come up with that. This is the structured content into about your related variables into separate YAML file, task into separate directory, and files into the separate directory which are required for our tools, and the handlers which we can manage into the separate directories. That means the separate YAML files. That means the entire playbook you are dividing into that multiple directories, as a var as separate directory, task as separate directory, and the files into the separate directory, handlers into the separate directory, and in those directories we are going to define the separate YAML files. We'll observe that some examples, we'll take it and we'll work with that. And this is the file structure for automated inclusion of role specific content. Yeah, so that is the very easy way to manage it about your tools, which tool is required to install it, which tool is required to remove it. Simply we can easily manage it if you are going to handle about all the tools for about your infrastructure with role based specific. And roles can be shared and pulled from Ansible Galaxy. Yes, we have this the ready-made role. Suppose I need to implement my Tomcat role, or Tomcat complete a Tomcat installation and a Tomcat services starting and a Tomcat configurations like server.xml or Tomcat users.xml configurations to manage it, and the deployment of that the Tomcat server. So if I would like to implement it my own way, which is going to take it more time. But the Galaxy, Ansible Galaxy teams, what they are doing is they are already providing about it the ready-made the roles. That means Tomcat, if you need it, the Tomcat role I can download it and I can use it in my infrastructure. MySQL, if I would like to manage it, the MySQL role I can find it, and MySQL role I can install it, or I can download it and I can use it for my application. Because I mean, what is the limitation that's where how does the playbook whenever you are implementing, if you just try to understand? Like if you are going to install one package, Apache package, you need to check it. Is it the Debian system you are going to run that package, or you are going to run this on the CentOS system, or you are going to run on that so-and-so Windows system? So those compatibilities are very, very important. And versions wise, the dependencies are very, very important. So whenever we are implementing about our own, which is going to take it the more time. But we can find it the ready-made the roles which are available from the Galaxy, we can just pull it and we can use it, or we can implement about our custom also by referring that those examples. Yeah, but Ansible Galaxy, I will come back to show that how you can identify this which the role is required, and that role how do we install it and how do we add to the playbook. Before that, let me explain that some examples, like just which we had it Apache, the playbook. But that playbook, instead of that's the Apache tool, instead of implementing like that, we have the better approach to manage that, the structure based, like the role based. And how do we define that? The Apache tool, whatever we discussed as a role, we'll just understand that example, the structure based, the file structure based. Then we'll understand about some other, like the galaxies, how it is supporting. And once this galaxy understood, then we are going to talk it that the Tomcat server, whatever we discuss, there's the manually like installing, and I mean installing the JDK, installing the Tomcat server, extracting this, there's the binary files, and renaming that directory, and starting the services, and configuring about our Tomcat users.xml file or server.xml files, whatever we were doing the manually, that is everything. We have this one role, that with that role we go for this with a single click, installing the Tomcat on all the Tomcat nodes. But before understanding about this, about our custom Tomcat role, but first let me explain about it Apache simple this role, because the Tomcat is a long process to understand, but basic to understand what is the exact role and how these roles are helping us in the playbooks point of view. Let's try to review that. Yeah, so there are some example roles we are going to talk it here. Yeah, so there are the roles, and here if you just understand, that's the point. Okay, so let me do that. What is that is, I'll come back to that's what I'm doing. Just wait. Yeah, so from those roles, we have all the roles are included in the same directory, but Apache role, especially to understand it, I am just copying this as a separate directory. So here I'm having this my playbook, that is YAML file, so installed in the Apache, and this YAML file is referring about this one of the directory, that is directory which we have, this is install Apache. Suppose if I just show that the tree structure notation of this directory, yeah, so if you just observe this tree structure, yes, what it is having. Now this is the main YAML file which is having this in the parent directory itself, and this YAML file is going to refer that this directory. What is the directory that we have is install Apache. And install Apache, I mean, if you just try to recollect of this, the Apache task, like we were defining that installing the package and starting the services. So now, like the playbook, whatever the section that we're trying to understand, the task section or the handler sections or the variable section, but variables, we didn't define any variables over there. So that is just, we were using the task and handlers. Now this is the main playbook, and whenever I run this playbook, we'll see this. What is the content we have in this playbook? Whenever I run this playbook, it is going to load that all the tasks from this main YAML file, and this playbook is going to load all the handlers is going to from this handlers directory which we have this main YAML file. That means, so like the roles advantage is, whatever the sections we are trying to understand in the playbook, all the sections we can structure it as a directory base. That means, so you can just define this one directory, in that directory create one handlers if you like to manage it, handlers, and create that main YAML file. And a task, if you like to define, create one task directory and define that main YAML file. And if you have this, like what we have like other section is where's. The where's directory you can create it, and separate main.yaml file you can define it, and we can add that the variables which are required to use it in these playbooks. But how does the main playbook, if you just observe that, objective is same, but this is just the better organizing about our the playbooks. So here, I mean, if you just observe that only 3 lines it is ended. What are those 3 lines? Okay, let me open this in. Yeah, so what are those 3 lines which others is, on which host that you are going to apply, and which user, all those sections, like a declaration section, whatever we discussed in the playbook, the declaration section is same here. But we don't define that the role section, or we sorry, the variable section, or we don't define that the task section or a handler section here. We just call that as a role. Which role do you want to call it or execute it? But what is the other role? I mean, how to define this role is, so just add it about roles and with colon, and what is the role it is going to call it? That means it is going to just refer this directory. So install Apache is the directory we have created wherever we have in this the same file. So it is going to refer that directory, install Apache directory. In that directory, if you just specify this where's directory or the handlers directories or the like a task directories, or the defaults directories we have, the files directories we have, or the templates directories we have. The Tomcat I will talk it which we have this all the file system. But this is just to understand this initially the roles, how it is helping. So whenever you run this playbook, it is going to refer that directory, and whatever the directories you have defined, from those directories main.yaml files, it is going to load it by default. So what is that advantage is, suppose this Apache, now we have this as separate the task and separate handlers, and you need to install the PHP module. Let's assume that some PHP the developers, they are expecting that the PHP infrastructure, but the PHP you are going to install is nothing but on their system or in their systems you need to install the PHP module and as well as Apache modules. That means Apache tool you need to configure, and as well as PHP module you need to configure. Then PHP modules, like a PHP related task, I can manage this in the PHP directory. And Apache tasks, as we have just seen, Apache tasks we can manage this as separate directory. And I can just include in my playbook which are all the tools that is required to install it. Like install Apache. And if I define that, the one more line, suppose if the PHP is also available, then I can add it here, install PHP. But install PHP, that's, I mean, you need to have that directory. In that directory, all the variables about the PHP, all the modules, or all the tasks and all the handlers, that's you need to implement it. So this is reusable. If I don't need that PHP, I can just simple that we can remove this from that playbook. And if I need it, I can just add it to the PHP or the Tomcat or the MySQL. For MySQL related, all the task modules, variables as separate directory. And a Tomcat related, all the tasks, all the variables, all the handlers, and all the files or all the templates of this Tomcat, we can manage it separate directory. And once those directories are available, then you can just include in your playbook which tools are required to execute it on the system, on that target group. Suppose if you're going to install that like the proxy layer. In the proxy layer, so the proxy servers as a group defined in the inventory, then install that Apache. Suppose you are going to do that the app server, and define that app server systems as separate inventory group, and define this the role as install Tomcat. And if you are going to define the target host as database, then define the host and install MySQL. That role you can just include it and you can run that. Yeah, that is the beauty of these roles, but we'll come back to understand more. Now let me run it and we'll see this how it is loading. But before that, so we're understanding this the main the playbook. In the playbook declaration section, and which role is required, that what are the directory we have defined here. This is the directory, so install Apache. Now install Apache, this directory has to be matched, and then once it is directory is identified, it is going to read the handles from here, it is going to read the tasks from here. But what we have defined in the task, if you just observe that, and what is the default file name which you are expecting here? It is main YAML file. You do, I mean, main YAML file, if you define that, you don't need to include this in the playbook. It is automatically loading about it. But what we have defined in the main YAML file is install in the Apache server. Or you can add it about it like copying about that index.html files or this, I mean, whatever we discussed, those are also you can add it in this main YAML file. And then there's the handlers, if you just observe that. Yeah, so handler, what we are expecting is restarting the HTTPD and the service name. So HTTPD enable as required or not and restart required or not. Yeah, so this is an easy way to reconstruct about your playbook on the base of the tool, that the tool dependencies you can identify, handlers, all the handlers of the tool into one file, and the tasks which are required for that, that is installing the packages or copying the configuration files or like any deployments which are defined in that, all the things into the task section, and the variables which are required to load it. So which will come back all the variable section in the Tomcat. So that's we have this understanding. And now what we can do this is we can just run this the playbook, and this playbook is going to load the role. It is going to refer that this directory. Now if you observe this in the task section, now it is loading about this option is nothing but this is the I mean it is reading this task from this role. Role is kind of the directory, but the directory which contains all the playbooks, I'm sorry, all the tasks and all the handlers and the variables or the files or the templates which are required for about your tool. Yeah, so this is the easy way to manage it about your infrastructure. And if you go back to this, we have another role. Suppose if you just observe this in the tree structure, now we have yeah, so let me remove this directory then. I've just created temporary about this Apache directory. Now, so install Apache YAML file is going to refer that install Apache role and install PHP. So there's I mean we have this role also. This YAML file, if I run it, and this file is going to call it my PHP tasks only. It is handled the PHP task only. But internally, if you just observe this, it is going to call it about Apache also. I will show you about it this. So here total how many roles we have is Apache role and the PHP role and the Tomcat role. Tomcat role I'll explain this tomorrow. This is a big concept we have, like how to manage it about the complete tool. Whatever we discussed this Tomcat, we are going to repeat that once again here. And if I go for this install PHP, just we have seen this install Apache. And if you just observe this install PHP, this YAML file, so what is the content that we have is, so here it is applying as a local system or what other group you can define. And the roles wise, it is first calling about install Apache. That means first it is going to load that all the handlers and the tasks which are available in this directory. So Apache to install it, the separate playbook. And PHP, whenever I am installing also, I am going to refer that the same task and the same handlers which are defined in the Apache. Suppose if I use it my single playbook defining that Apache task and handlers, I cannot reuse it for my PHP module. That means again in the PHP this YAML file, I need to add it again the tasks which are belong to that Apache related. So the playbooks you are using, that is not the reusability. The roles you can just segregate about your tools and you can just include which tools are required in the playbook. Now it is going to call this first Apache, then it is going to call it about PHP modules. But PHP, if you just observe this, what it is having this, it is just adding about it some PHP modules like as a task. That means installing some PHP packages are defined here. So if I run it about this YAML file, install PHP, but we are not running that any roles explicitly. We are just including that which role is required to execute in the playbook. Yes, automatically it is referring this install Apache role first. From this role, it is loading this task. And then, but it is applying on only single node. Yes, local we have defined. And install PHP is from this module, it is trying to install this task, that is install PHP. Yeah, the PHP we are doing that the first time. Yes, it is going to install all these PHP related packages. And let me explain this PHP role, what we have defined here it is. Suppose if you go to the install PHP and in the task, we can have this the main YAML file. Yes. So here, one more point in the playbook while implementing the task, like suppose I need to install the some 20 packages. 20 packages like a wget or the gate or like Apache or whatever the like the sequence of the packages. Instead of defining that the m and package name, suppose normally how we are defining is for each package to install it separate. So we are using about m and then the name of the package and then state of the package. If I have this the 20, then what we need to do this is we need to repeat 20 times the second package, third package, fourth package. Okay, this is not taking that. Okay, leave it. So like this, you need to add it in the playbook the 20 times. And tomorrow one more package is required to install it, then you need to add it 21. But instead of defining that, what is the concept which other says? We can use it iterative approaches. That means module is only one module. Finally, we are going to use it in all the sections, only one module. What is that module is? M module. But M module is required the 20 times repeating that. That means what are all the packages that I would like to install it, the package name, I need to just replace it 20 times on the same module. That's like as the for loops, if you just try to recollect the for loops and the same block of the statements, how many number of times that is required to iterate it, we can use it iterative approaches. So the same concept which you have this in the shell scripting point of the iterations. Here, how do we define about your module that a module is required to repeat it n number of times? So that's concept point of view. What we can do this is, so the here name, so there's a documentation and M module, the package name and state, but we are not hard coding the package name over here. What are the concept that we have taken is with items is that's one concept is available. That means you can define this module with items. But what are those items? That items, the package names, you can just pass it that the git package or the wget package or HTTP D package. So what are the packages that you are expecting that all the packages we can define here, like a number of packages which we have this. So what the playbook is going to do this is, so it is going to read the first item, but here you should not hard code that. What we need to define is so we need to just read the item. So we just need to define this item. From where it is getting is from the with item section, what all the items you have defined. The first git will be replaced here and git will be performed with this module execution. And when this is done, the second item is going to replace here and the second time this m install will be done. And like that, the number of times it is going to repeat it on the basis of the number of items which are defined. This is iterative approaches. So how do you pass it about this? The list of all the items which are required for about your module is with items. So if you define the 5 here or 6 here, the 6 times the same module will be repeated as the number of items which are defined in this with item section. So iterative approaches, conditional based approaches, and as well as the catching the result output and printing that output, like a debug which we discussed in the shell script, like the set -x or the +x which we can use it, like the same concept, the debugs, how do we use it whenever you are running about your playbooks, all these tasks. Yeah, so here whenever we are installing the PHP related modules, the PHP, the developer related packages, peer packages, it is going to try to add it and it is going to install number of times. Now let's observe that. Say here, yes, it is installed. First item is PHP, second item as PHP GD, third item as PHP PR. On the system, it is applied the PHP modules and it is completed. Yeah, so the 2 points, okay, these are with items is like as playbook implementation. In the task, you can add it, the iterative approaches. But the concept what we are trying to understand from the roles is, so like now the requirement is, if I have this for about your application app requirement point of view, you need to manage that Apache tool, and you need to manage it about some app server, Tomcat, and you need to manage it about MySQL. And Apache activities, what we are expecting is installing Apache. Suppose today we are using the 2 Apache servers. Okay, on those 2 systems, we need to install the package. We need to make sure the service up and running, and we need to configure it, and we need to deploy. The static content files which are required for that. That means we just observe the task on the Siege tool installation, and then starting or stopping. And then configuration tools, configuration files management, like Apache point of http.conf file. If it is a Tomcat server, the Tomcat server related configuration files. And then which we are expecting the task like deployments. And maybe if it is required that the firewalls enabling for this service on the system, firewalls, like which we can say that IP tables. Yeah, so like one tool you are installing on the system is nothing but, so these are all the management activities which you are expecting that. So there's the install or starting or configuration files distributing with the custom properties, and deploying that some static files which are required for the Apache, or enabling the ports to allow that or deny for the service point of view from the firewalls point of view. So these are all the activities which we are expecting not only for Apache. Suppose for application is using the Tomcats, all these activities, and then MySQL you are expecting this the database to configure it, MySQL related activities. So they're all the points. Suppose if you have those any monitoring tools, that monitoring tool related some plugins you need to install it. Otherwise, suppose database is required to keep on tracking that the database is up and running or not. So if I would like to keep on tracking about this, my SQL is my database is up and running or not, my MySQL database instances are registered with this monitoring tool. That means some packages we need to install, some configuration like the monitoring central server where it is available, that server information we need to define in this MySQL systems. Yeah, the monitoring related configurations which are expecting that. Yeah, so thus if you just observe that application to manage it, the load balancers, that is Apache proxy servers, or the Nginx, or the HA proxy, or the middleware servers, and the databases. So what are the tools that is required to manage it for about your application? All these tools we can easily manage with the roles. Now, so this is my requirement. Let's assume that for my application, then Apache is one directory I can create it. Apache related task, Apache related handlers, Apache related files, Apache related templates, I can manage it into separate directory. And a Tomcat has separate directory, Tomcat related all the activities has separate directory, and MySQL related all the files and all the tasks or the handlers has separate directory. Then in my playbook, so which one is required, I can just call it that role and that particular target group. Suppose I need to add that Apache on my new system. Suppose they have given this, or we need to set up this the complete Apache, which we have this on existing two systems. We need to add the third system to my load balancers. Then Apache related all the activities I need to apply on the new system as a provisioning concept. Then simply that node, which is the third one which is available, you can add it to the about your load balancers group and you can define it. But we are going to come back to this, and with the AWS we are going to talk at all these activities. So how to manage the load balancers with rolling updates from the Ansible to manage it, which will come back. But the roles are helping about it to manage it about your infrastructure easily. And suppose one more advantage what we have this roles is, suppose in we have the two projects. In one project already Tomcat role everything has been set up that and they are using that. Now you can take this the Tomcat role and you can use it in second project also. Reusability, more flexible way. Yeah, so that is the points which we have, the advantage of these roles. Now Ansible Galaxy, how do we use it? That means we are saying that suppose if I need the Tomcat role, I can simply download from that the Ansible Galaxy and I can use it that. Or if I need this, or if I need to set up the JDK role, I can download it and I can use it that. So, but where we can find it list of all the roles, we just browse it that the Ansible Galaxy. Just type in the Google about Ansible Galaxy. So this is galaxy.ansible.com. So this is the official site. So here you can find it, the roles which are required for cloud environment are required for the database point of view, or the development environments, or the networking related roles, or the monitoring related, or security packaging. Just we had it M package, or the system related. You can find it. So the kind of the functionality based, or you can search for this the particular the role as well as. Suppose I need to have the Java role. That means I need to set up this Java on all the systems. So simple, I can download the Java. Yeah, so the Java role, you can find it so many the roles which are available. And whenever you are finding that which role I can use, it is the always recommended is, so which one is having the more downloads. So he's one of the guy, like a Gearling guy. So he has implemented the so many roles and he's providing that the most of the roles as Ansible point of view. And you can identify that which one is the best by referring that the number of downloads also. If you just observe that this role is having this only 39,000 downloads, but this is having this almost the 19 lakhs of thus the downloads, and who is watching on the stars. And whenever you find it the particular role, you can just select about that role like this, like as a background box, how we are identifying how you are downloading that. The same thing here, Ansible roles. That means the platforms to set up that. And here you can see there's some information, and before downloading that you can refer that this JDK is supporting on which are all the platforms, the OS platforms. Yes, this role you can take it and you can directly run on the Debian systems or the enterprise Linux systems or the Fedora systems or the Ubuntu based systems. All these flavors it is supporting that. There are the Ubuntu 16 version, Ubuntu 14 version. So there are the different versions of the Ubuntu also it is supporting about it. And what are the different Java versions are available. So those versions also you can find it. So which has given that. So simple, with one click on any type of this, the type of the distribution, you can download it and you can install it about these roles. Now thus the point is, but how I can download this role? Once if you identify this role, okay, I would like to use this role, or I would like to download these roles related, the completed task or the handler. But how I can download it is, if you just refer about this the Ansible Galaxy. So here you can find it some commands which are helping that the Ansible Galaxy install, and this this role name which you can pass it. So this is the author and this is the role name. You can just copy this command and you can run in your Ansible master machine. Now this is downloading the role from that guy. And this is the Java which is installed. Install is nothing but don't think that's role is installed and the Java is installed. Just that role is downloaded. But where these roles are downloading is if we just observe that the default the location. So for the roles is if we just refer that ansible.cfg file, which we have this in etc host, etc Ansible, you can find us the default roles location. So the default role location what you have this is in the user home directory dot Ansible and the roles. So whenever you are trying to install this the roles will be added to this location, user home directory dot Ansible roles, and this is the role name. Now if I go to this directory, now let's observe the tree structure. Here in the tree structure of this role, you can find it the tasks, but he has given that the task for the different flavors. Like one is main YAML file, this is the default file which will be executed, and this main YAML file it is going to check it the before applying the playbook, it is going to check it, is it Debian based or is it Red Hat based or is it the Fedora based, and on the base of that these files which will be loaded. So he is providing that the playbook supporting for the multiple operating systems. But multiple operating systems, suppose if I'm installing the Java on Red Hat, the package name is different. On the Debian, is package name is different. And on this, like the Fedora systems, maybe the package name is different. So to handle that, the different OSs and the different flavors, he has implemented this multiple YAML files, and finally he's going to call it all these YAML files in that main YAML file. So the task section or the template sections, and he has given there some Java home template, and the variables, yeah, the separate infrastructure, separate variables he is managing that, the vars directory. And so he has defined some readme files, so license you can refer it. Yeah, so there's the defaults is one more directory which is referring that as a like a default the configuration default variables, or if you have the custom variables you can define here. So that's like the complete, but I'll come back to this explaining about our, but if you go for here you can just open it and you can just refer about it first to this main YAML file, and this main YAML file is calling about, suppose if you go back to that the cat, and if you just observe this the main YAML file, the first he is defining the Java packages, so the Java packages, but he is reading this all these variables, so from the default section or variable section, and he is implementing that with when condition. The Java packages is not defined, then it is going to refer this the Java packages from this variable. So this variable where it is located, that is in var section. But if you refer it, that is going to take it more time. So, but just I'll come back to the Tomcat level, so to explain it one by one property. But here, this is he has implemented to support for that. So before including, is it Red Hat YAML file, or is it Debian YAML file, or is it the Fedora based? It is checking about this OS families. So whenever the OS family is the Red Hat, suppose if I'm running this playbook on the Red Hat system, then this playbook, I mean, this task file will be loaded. So including the task, this is one module which is helping. And finally, he is setting the environment setup like a template. He is copying about this template to this destination directory with these permissions. Yeah, Java home is also he is adding to that with this JavaScript file. Sorry, shell script file. And he is executing that, he's just copying and he's defining the Java home. Yeah, that means like whatever the playbook he has implemented, so this playbook is supporting for that all the environments wise he has implemented. Yeah, so distributions he is checking that, but all these variables from I mean, where he is reading is this Ansible. If you see this Ansible underscore, they're all from gather facts. And if you see the some variables where, yeah, so if you see that this kind of the variable, these are all variables from var section. But how do we read it? I'll talk at the separate section. We have the tomcat about custom one. So this is going to have the more information. You need to have the more patience, like to open this Debian what he has implemented. If the Red Hat, suppose now we are going to run on this YAML file on Red Hat based system. So if it's the Red Hat based system, so then which task it is going to include it? Set up Red Hat.yaml file. So then it is loading about setup Red Hat.yaml file. So in this, like M he has used like to install about M packages. That means the Java packages which are required. Yeah, so these are like this role which is supporting for that all the ways platforms. You can just reuse it that. So that is before downloading, you can refer that which are all the platforms it is download. It is supporting that role. And what are the different versions are available. This version, you can take it and you can define that the Java version in the default variable that the playbook or that version of the package which will be installed. Yeah, this is the flexibility so which we have. But now finally, how do we use it to this role? So if there's a role, if you just observe this roles, I mean this role has been downloaded here, but how I can use it, this role is just to take it this role name. And let's go back to about our any directory you can define. There is no choice here itself. You can create YAML file, or you can go to that about our files. Okay, let me create one YAML file here. Install underscore java.yaml file. And in this YAML file, let's define that some comment if you would like to add it. Then we can define that the hosts, on which host does you want to apply that is sent to yes. Then become mechanisms on all those variables you can add it. But once those are added, how you can include the role is in the role section. So just copy the role name, that is gilingai.java. If I take it and if I run this, now what are the target group I have defined? So it is going to take this the CentOS system. But here if you observe that most of the tasks are skipping. Why it is skipping this? So this is, I mean, it is verifying the Ubuntu system, it is verifying the Debian system, it is verifying the RHSL system. First it is gathering that the facts information. So including the version specific variables. Yes. So it is identified the CentOS or the Red Hat, and this task is including version specific variable. That means that file in the vars folder, if you just observe that we have the different files for the different environments, that variable file is loading here. Then it is skipping for these two Ubuntu and Debian, so they are not matched. Then it is defining the Java packages. So it is trying to execute it on these Java packages, and yeah, so it is saying that you need to be root to perform this command. We are trying to install these packages, and we didn't define that the become variable. So if you'd like to specify this root user, become yes. Yeah, so this approach you can find it ready-made roles, and you can use it these roles as it is. Or if you would like to implement about your custom one, you can download that the one sample role from the Ansible Galaxy, and you can just take it which are all the tasks that is required, or which are all the variables that is required, or which are all the like handlers that is required from the downloaded role, and you can implement about your custom role. So That is, either you can use it to these defaults if that the team is accepted, or if they don't accept, we need to go for this about our custom one. Then download these sample roles from this Ansible Galaxy and keep this in our like in our workspace area as a reference point of view. Then you can copy some the tasks or some like the variables which are required as per about your type of the distribution. Then you need to customize it to the task section and the variable section and handler sections. Yeah, so that is the recommended approach, like referring about this Ansible Galaxy on the base of the tool, because we don't know that what are the task that is required to perform. That's on the base of this that tool. Suppose they have given us the tool is PostgreSQL. For PostgreSQL, we don't know anything like how do I install it, or what are the package names that is required to install the PostgreSQL, and what are the configuration files for the PostgreSQL, or how I can start it, stop this the PostgreSQL, and what are the modules that I need to use it for the PostgreSQL. We don't know that. Then you can download it as a reference point of view. You can just browse it here. Yeah, so once this role is identified, and you can just download, you can go for this GitHub repository also. If you just click on this GitHub repository, that means these handlers are the task files, like these are all the task files he has given that to set up that. But you need to have the patience like to browse it all these files and organizing about which tasks are required for about your requirement. Yes, that is kind of the R&D where you are not going to implement the complete tool for about your infrastructure in single day. But if you need it, some references which you can find it here, the task or the templates which are required or variables which are required, or you can refer these documentations, so which has given that. And before going to work with this tool, what you need to do this is the first instead of using my Ansible, first of all, how I can install this the PostgreSQL. So you need to refer this the normal documentation about that Postgre sorry, the PostgreSQL documentation. We need to refer that. Then we can get that some idea. Okay, this is the first step, this is the second step, and the third step. Then those steps, after understanding that, then you need to refer about our Ansible tasks. Yeah, so this is a kind of the way of approach to implement about your configuration files, because everything is not possible to implement by us. You can refer about it to this sample, the playbooks downloading from the Galaxy, and you can use it as references to implement about your custom tools and custom templates to manage it and everything. Yeah, so these are like the agenda which we have this, the any tool you are going to configure it, it is not required to know about everything about the tool, but you can refer that the first some documentation about the tool, then go back to this about our Ansible Galaxy to find that particular tool related role and identify thus the task or thus the variables or the templates, and on the base of the type of distributions which are defined, and then you can take it to these references and define this about your own variables, where I mean your own the handlers or the tasks or the defaults which are required. Then you can include that role in that role section. Yeah, so there's that main agenda which we have, so to manage it about all these roles and stuff. And if you just observe this output, yeah, so it is included some but they're all skipped. Yeah, so it is ensuring that the Java is installed, and yeah, only one task which is performed, so they're all skipping. Why it is skipping this? Maybe these are all already included tasks or are not supported. So if you just open this file and if you go to the task section and this task, if you refer that, then you can review that which module it has been is and why it is skipping that. That means maybe Debian based or the particular the OS family based, it is skipping about it. And Java home, so if it is already configured or not, it is verifying that, but it is skipping this on the basis of this requirement. Yeah, so this is the way you can easily manage it about your infrastructure, and you can apply the targets and you can define it. And tomorrow we go for this understanding about our custom role. That is Tomcat, the Tomcat related the files, handlers, task or templates and the variable, because this no, I mean we know already this tool, how do we manage it manually? Already we were doing that two classes the manually to set up that. But how do we implement that's manual activities, everything whatever we have done with about our Ansible roles, the playbooks. That's we see this tomorrow understanding about this. And then we can wind up the Ansible. Then we can start it about it monitoring tool. But anyway, one class is going to take it to just to understand the Tomcat role itself, because we are going to define some custom services also, like what about the services, how to manage the custom services. We have some concepts to understand from this Tomcat. We'll come back. And when that is done, so next we start about this monitoring tool, that's in Nagios. So there's two classes that is required to understand. Then we start about AWS, and once that's AWS understood, then we'll come back to that once again Ansible with the AWS infrastructure, how to manage it. But here we are trying to understand everything with the on-premises system. That means that's about our background systems. But once there's a cloud, if you know it, and the cloud instances, that's virtual machines, how do you launch it and how do you work with that? Then through the Ansible, how do you provision that those cloud infrastructure as well as. So those point of view, then once again we'll come back to that Ansible with the AWS sections. Yeah, that's points which you have for today. So we will wind up, and tomorrow we start about this Tomcat to understand this role. And then if the time is there, we start about this monitoring tool, that is Nagios, we are going to discuss. Yeah, any queries or questions?